All right, let's jump straight into this explainer and unravel the true crime mystery behind India's most notorious underground gambling syndicate. We're looking at a story that literally has it all: suspense, the Mumbai Underworld, Bollywood connections, and this massive illegal empire built entirely from scratch.
I want to start off by hooking you with a staggering figure: 500 crore rupees. That was the massive monthly turnover generated by one single man. A guy who came to Mumbai as a refugee from Karachi with absolutely nothing in his pockets and who somehow kick-started this breathtaking enterprise with an entry fee of just 1 single rupee.
But what makes this whole story so fascinating is the absolute paradox of it all. Just think about this for a second. This empire had no factory. It had zero physical product, absolutely no corporate office. The whole shebang was run on nothing but mud pots and tiny paper chits. Yet somehow, this penniless refugee built a completely untouchable syndicate backed by Bollywood stars, politicians, and literally the most feared underworld dons in the city.
Moving into Section 1, the 500 crore empire, from refugee to kingpin.
So to really understand how this unbelievable network was born, we actually have to travel back in time to pre-independence Bombay, long before it was called Mumbai, to see exactly where this all kicked off. Back then, the bustling business districts had this really peculiar game called Ankara Jugar, which basically translates to figures gambling. It was this system where local textile workers would place bets on the opening and closing rates of cotton. But here's the truly bizarre part. These rates were transmitted via teleprinters all the way from the New York Cotton Exchange. So you had a local Indian laborer whose daily fate and hard-earned wages were directly tied to some random trader's decision sitting thousands of miles away in New York. Pretty wild, right?
Which brings us to Section 2, from cotton to whirly Matka and the 1961 crisis that changed everything.
You know, every massive industry eventually faces some kind of disruption that forces it to evolve. And this underground gambling scene? Yeah, it was absolutely no different. In fact, a massive crisis almost killed the betting scene overnight. But instead, it paved the way for our main characters. Basically, in 1961, the New York Cotton Exchange suddenly stopped transmitting its rates. The entire betting system was just on the verge of total collapse. But then, in 1962, a guy from a farming family named Kalyanji Bhagat stepped in. He launched Whirly Matka by pulling imaginary numbers from a literal mud pot instead of waiting on New York. And it was a massive hit. Then, fast forward to 1964, his manager, Ratan Khatri, has this huge falling out with him, splits from the operation entirely, and starts his own rival syndicate.
Now, before we get into Khatri's big takeover, let's quickly contrast these two eras. The old cotton beds were super dependent on international markets, really complex, and they only ran Monday to Friday. But Bhagat's Whirly Matka, that was purely local. It used numbers drawn from a pot, and it was available 24/7, and crucially, it cost just 1 rupee to play. This honestly created a true democracy of gambling where absolutely anyone, from a taxi driver to a beggar on the street, could play the game.
All right, Section 3, Rise of the Matka King and Ratan Khatri's Genius Innovations.
When Ratan Khatri split from Bhagat to form New Whirly Matka, he didn't just copy the game, he completely transformed it. The guy understood human psychology better than anyone else in the business. He used crude probability and simple math to hook millions of players. So here's how it worked. First, a random bystander draws 3 playing cards, let's say a 1, a 4, and a 7. Step 2, you add them all up to get 12. Step 3, you drop the first digit, the 1, leaving you with the number 2. So the final winning number declared is 147 multiplied by 2. This whole process made gamblers feel like there was this sophisticated system that they could somehow crack if they were just smart enough.
And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates Khatri's true product innovation. Because he wasn't just selling a game of chance, he was selling extreme transparency and absolute trust to his gamblers. I mean, after every single game, the entire deck of cards was destroyed right there in front of the public, so no one could ever claim the deck was rigged. Any random bystander could be the one to draw the cards. He even shifted the schedule back to Monday through Friday, specifically to give his syndicate that premium, official stock market kind of feel.
But here's the thing, the transparency was only half the trap. The other half was the payout, 900 rupees. The intoxicating lure of this game was the massive return. If you managed to hit an exact 3-number match, your meager 1 rupee bet instantly turned into 900 rupees. To put that in perspective, for a daily wage laborer making maybe 5 rupees a day, this wasn't just a win, it was a completely life-changing sum of money. And that fueled an addiction stronger than anything else in the city.
Let's move to Section 4,
power, police, and downfall. The Robin Hood of the underworld. So as the daily turnover skyrocketed into the hundreds of crores, Khatri's influence naturally peaked, and his operations became deeply entwined with the darkest, most violent elements of the criminal underworld. To navigate all this, Khatri crafted a really deliberate, iconic persona for himself. He always wore a spotless white kurta with his signature scarf, closely mirroring real-life underworld dons of the time like Haji Mastan. He actually funded Bollywood movies and essentially built up this Robin Hood image. Distant relatives, producers, anyone in need would come to him for help, and he would freely just give away this gambling money. His larger-than-life public presence was so huge, it actually directly inspired the 1975 Bollywood hit movie Dharmatma.
But, as we know, no empire goes unchallenged forever. Let's walk through the dramatic milestones of his downfall. In 1975, during the emergency, Khatri was actually jailed for 19 months. But astonishingly, his syndicate survived, and the betting just continued globally. Then by 1993, reality hit hard when he was placed on a no-fly list during a vacation, which prompted his retirement. Then came the brutal 1995 police crackdowns led by encounter cops. The violence definitely didn't stop though. In 2008, a rival Matka heir named Suresh Bhagat was assassinated in a staged truck crash. And finally, in 2020, Ratan Khatri passed away at the age of 88.
Now, that crucial turning point really happened in 1995. The difference before and after the crackdown is stark. You see, the Mumbai police finally realized that Matka wasn't just some harmless game, it was acting as a massive recruitment ground and a ready cash cow for violent underworld dons. The resulting police offensive was huge. It dropped the number of active bookies from over 2,000 down to roughly 300. It practically killed the offline Matka scene overnight.
And it is really important that we look at the dark reality behind all of this immense wealth. Because behind Khatri's pristine white kurta and that generous public image were countless destroyed families. People were completely drowning in debt, which directly led to violent recoveries, ruined lives, and fatal underworld rivalries. Make no mistake, this 500 crore empire was undeniably built on the blood and tears of desperate people.
Bringing us to Section 5, the modern gambling trap and the digital rebirth of Matka.
So we're shifting our explainer now from a historical true crime story to a very urgent modern reality check. Because the big question is, did the Matka game really die with Ratan Khatri and the 1995 police crackdowns? Well, the shocking reality is, no, absolutely not. The syndicate didn't die, it just evolved. And today, it's sitting right there inside our pockets. What happened was, the offline bookies who actually survived ended up executing this massive digital migration. They evolved into fast online apps. I mean, if you search terms like fastest Matka result today, you will literally be flooded with results. They cleverly disguise themselves as modern online gaming and lottery platforms, continuing the exact same cycle. The culture is still so incredibly relevant that it was recently featured in an Amazon Prime series. So yeah, the mudpots might be gone, but the digital algorithms are doing the exact same job.
To truly grasp the staggering scale of this modern problem, just think about this number: over 8,400. That is the number of illegal gambling websites recently blocked by the government, alongside 4,900 specific apps taken down under online gaming acts. The sheer volume here just goes to show how aggressively this underground industry has scaled up using the internet.
And that brings us to the core takeaway of this entire explainer. There's a quote that perfectly summarizes this. Gambling, in any form, is a greed that destroys your hard-earned money in an instant. The technology has been upgraded, sure, and the interface is definitely sleeker, but the repackaging of the game really hasn't changed its fundamentally destructive nature one single bit.
Just look at this incredible evolution for a second. From betting on New York's cotton rates in Ankara Jukar, to Kalyanji Bhagat's Whirly Matka, to Ratan Khatri's new Whirly Matka, right up to the smartphone apps we see today. The form constantly changes to evade the law, but the psychological trap and the actual human cost, they've remained exactly the same for nearly a century.
All right, let's quickly recap what we've learned today so you walk away with a really clear understanding of this whole phenomenon. First, Ratan Khatri took a collapsed betting system and engineered a 500 crore empire through this incredibly clever illusion of forced transparency. Second, this immense wealth directly funded the violent underworld of Mumbai. Third, while the 1995 police crackdown successfully destroyed the physical dens, it really just pushed the industry into the shadows. And finally, today, the Matka empire thrives digitally, proving beyond a doubt that gambling addiction seamlessly adapts to whatever new technology comes along.
So I want to leave you with this somewhat provocative, lingering thought. The very next time you're scrolling on your phone and you see one of those flashy ads for a fastest result betting app or a quick online lottery, will you remember the blood, the tears, and the 500 crore underworld empire that built the very foundation of what you're looking at? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating true history with me today.